Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here from ZooBox with another daily movie review. Oh, yeah. So, this past weekend, 4th of July. What are you watching the 4th of July, huh? You watch The Patriot? Do you watch, I don't know, that sketch from Robot Chicken about signing the Declaration of Independence? What do you do? In this house, we watch Independence Day. Or most of the time. Sometimes we watch Independence Day. This is not a tradition, but we have done it a few times. Probably at least 3 or 4 times in the past 5 or 6 years, actually. And yeah, so let's get right into it, okay? It's directed by Roland Emmerich. It's written by Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich. It stars Will Smith, Bill Pullman, Jeff Goldblum, Mary McDonnell, Judd Hirsch, Robert Loggia, Randy Quaid, Margaret Collin, James Rebhorn, Harvey Fierstein, Adam Baldwin, Brent Spiner, James Duvall, Vivica A. Fox, Lisa Jacob, and so many more. This thing's got a fat ass cast. It's got a real ass on it. They're all in there. All of them. Running around in circles trying to fight these aliens, huh? Trying to survive. And that is, if Roland Emmerich has anything, a skill as a director, if he is good at anything, it is being able to juggle massive casts. Now, if you remember, it was like a week or so ago, we talked about Roland Emmerich's follow-up to Independence Day, which was the not a very good movie, Godzilla. Because Godzilla is kind of it's kind of boring, and it's long, and the characters aren't very good. Now, Independence Day could potentially have felt the same way. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of Independence Day. It's not like my favorite movie ever, but I enjoy it. I enjoy it for what it is. I've got some nostalgia to it. I saw it so many times as a kid. It reminds me of, it's like one of those movies like I talked about like a month ago, The Stand, the miniseries for The Stand. It's just been so long. This has just been part of my life for so long. I almost have like zero objectivity. I have no idea what life is like without knowing about Independence Day. I mean, I was 10 years old when it came out, right? So, and we had it in the house. You know, we didn't just rent Independence Day. I think my dad bought Independence Day. And when you're young, and back in the 90s, you know, everybody had like 10 tapes. And you watch the same fucking 10 tapes over and over again. It was Independence Day, Demolition Man, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Predator. What else did we have? Others. Just movies like that. I think we had Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Randomly. Batman 89. That was another one. A lot of these also, should be noted, they're VHSs without covers. So thank God they had the stickers on the VHS so I would know. Wouldn't have to play that game. But yeah, so it was just in that rotation. It was one of those movies. So I've seen it so many times because, you know, at the time, you know, when you're a kid, you're not discerning. You don't know what the fuck is good, what is bad, what you like, what you don't like. And you just kind of accept things. No matter what it is, you just accept it. It's entertainment. It's a very pure form of experiencing entertainment because you just completely take it on its own terms and you're not judgmental about it. And you're like, this gave me 2 hours of being able to sit in front of a TV, especially because of back then, back in the 90s, right? Now, we weren't all plugged into phones and computers and YouTube and all that stuff. Like, you know, there was a premium on sitting down and watching a movie at night, you know? Get away from reading those fucking books. Those things are disgusting. They're not like the moving pictures. They're not like the talkies. Okay? But like I said, I've never been like, it's never been a favorite. I like Independence Day, but it's never been a favorite. I would never put it on a list of like top 50 movies that are my favorite movies ever. Independence Day probably wouldn't make the list. Maybe it would make like the top 200, you know, if I were to sit down and actually go through this. Maybe it would. Because, like I said, there is some things to appreciate in Independence Day. I'm not a huge Roland Emmerich fan. I think he does these over-the-top CGI disaster porn things. This was like right on the cusp of that. He couldn't quite do that. So there's actually a lot of cool practical stuff in here. It's got generally decent characters, which is not something that is normal for a Roland Emmerich movie. He doesn't understand how to create interesting characters in his movies, and that's kind of their fatal flaw at the end of the day. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the casting, right? I mean, you got Will Smith coming up. This was like one of his first big things. Bill Pullman, great character actor. Jeff Goldblum, established, but also just a fun presence. This was, I think, one of the first times Jeff Goldblum had done something kind of silly in a while. He got his start with genre stuff. Earth Girls Are Easy, The Fly. But he became, at some point, kind of more of a serious actor for a few years before kind of coming back into the fold. I mean, this would have been like a couple years after Jurassic Park. Who doesn't love Jurassic Park, right? So I think it really puts it over the top because the casting does so much of the work. You have like Randy Quaid as the crop duster guy, Judd Hirsch as as Jeff Goldblum's annoying older Jewish dad. My boy. Like, just a walking stereotype. And he's even funnier. It gets even more, like, ridiculous in the sequel to Independence Day, which I'll talk about a little bit at the end of this video. So I don't want to make a whole video about Resurgence. But, yeah. So there's a lot of cool stuff. It's actually paced very well. It'll fool you for the first, like, hour of this movie. It's super engaging. And like I said, it goes back to Roland Emmerich being able to juggle a giant cast, being able to kind of keep your eye on so many different moving pieces. I would say that once it actually kind of reveals itself, it just stops being kind of super interesting, in my opinion, because it just has to become plot at some point. And it's a long movie. It's like 2.5 hours long. And I would say the middle hour 10 is just plot. Like, so they do all the setup with the characters, all the moving pieces. You've put everything in place, and then they just have to deliver kind of exposition and plot. And, and it's got a lot of fun, fun-ish 90s Hollywood cliche things, like a lot of one-liners, a lot of humor. They balance out everything with humor in these movies, because at the end of the day, they're kind of like populist movies, They're made for the widest possible audience, just like what Michael Bay does when he makes those fucking atrocious Transformers movies. Michael Bay, though, Michael Bay is actually like a really cynical, almost seems like evil dude. And him making a children's franchise is very strange. Roland Emmerich is also, from what I can see in interviews, kind of a harsh, kind of weird, cynical person. But he just it doesn't project onto the screen all the time. If you go watch something like maybe like Godzilla, like I talked about before, or I don't know, 2012, the day after tomorrow, the one about when everything freezes. I think maybe those fall more in line with kind of the Michael Bay-ishness, where it's just kind of just characters you don't like at all. You just don't give a shit about. And then the humor and the structure and everything is just, it's made so that you can watch it if you're 3 and like it, and watch it when you're 50 and like it. And then, in my opinion, that kind of, it serves no one. Then you have really kind of no vision. It just feels kind of rote and bland. But Independence Day, in fairness, has, I think, enough going on that it's able to kind of maintain at least your interest on some level. And it has a somewhat of a fun, kind of uplifting ending. The good guys prevail, or so we thought. So the good guys come through. Everybody's happy. There's fireworks. Bill Pullman giving, that rousing speech. Who doesn't love the Bill Pullman speech from the end of Independence Day? Communists, probably. Actually, no. Communists would probably like it a lot, right? It's like a unifying speech. It's like, hey, listen, Independence Day no longer specifically American. Now this is a global holiday. The globalists, they're out there. They're trying to... See, it's in Independence Day. I was being primed, okay? Predictive programming. I was being primed. This is what it's going to be like when the holograms come. When we get attacked by these hologram false flag aliens, and they use it as a pretext to, I don't know, harvest your cum, put your brain in a vat, so you can become like a Matrix-like battery. You know what I'm talking about, everybody. Come on, no lie. You've been on the internet. If you're at Zoobox, you know what I'm talking about. Zoobox, this is what Zoobox, this is our main concern in life, is becoming a human battery. I know, I'm just rambling. I'm rambling. I had to do this at a weird time. I'm like half asleep. Trying to wake up. But yeah, Independence Day. Everybody, I think, kind of generally gives Independence Day kind of a pass. You know? Like I said, it's got enough fun elements that you are going to, I think, at least enjoy it. I would be really curious to watch this with somebody who's never seen it. Because I think for most of us, and most people, especially like people my age, I'm 33, it's just tied up in so much of your nostalgia of your life from being a kid. It's just tied up in that. And it's almost hard to separate them. That's like I said, it's just, is it a good movie? Is it not a good movie? I don't know. Because there are parts of it I think that work really well, and other parts that I think are incredibly boring. It's like a slog to get through. Like, holy shit, the extended version of Independence Day is awful. That is actually a good thing to note. Okay, there is a bad version of Independence Day, and it actually is already on home video. It's the extended cut. It just adds I think it adds another 20 minutes to the movie of just stuff that is completely redundant. Like, when you see it, you're like, oh, I completely understand why this is not in this movie. When you make an extended cut, I guess you're just doing that to get people to buy it again, maybe. Go see that extra footage. So it's one of those things, like, there's so much happens in post-production, especially in the editing process for movies like this, that is so important, and they can fuck it up really easily. And I think watching something like the extended cut is a reminder of that. And maybe that's kind of what happens in other movies sometimes, with like Michael Bay. Like, why do these Transformer movies need to be 3-hour epics? Why do they need to be that way? Like, if you could cut down a tight 90-minute, 2-hour movie, but they're really indulgent. And Independence Day almost becomes that. You can justify the length a little bit just because of the amount of characters. And they do take the time to kind of, everybody gets a little bit of a moment. Everybody kind of gets a payoff. So on that level, it's broadly satisfying. So years later, as we all know, Independence Day, they were threatening to make a sequel to Independence Day for, I don't know how long, everybody. Fucking 10 years. And they were trying to kind of get the stars to align. They wanted the whole cast to come back. They wanted Will Smith. I think Will Smith was the big holdout for a long time. But basically what happened is, in Independence Day Resurgence, you got kind of like a Jurassic Park Lost World situation where Jeff Goldblum kind of takes the lead a little bit, even though it's still an ensemble. Independence Day Resurgence, directed by Roland Emmerich, written by a bunch of different people: Nicholas Wright, James A. Woods. Stars Liam Hemsworth, Jeff Goldblum, Bill Pullman, Jesse T. Usher, Mika Monroe, Stella Ward, William Finchner, Judd Hirsch returning, Brent Spiner returning, Vivica A. Fox returning. She's a doctor in this one. Angel Baby, Charlotte Gainsborough for the Paycheck Award of 2016. Charlotte Gainsborough makes movies with fucking Werner Herzog, so it was kind of funny to see her show up here. What's the synopsis? 2 decades after the first Independence Day invasion, Earth is faced with a new extrasolar threat, but will mankind's new space defenses be enough? So it's kind of interesting, right? The end of Independence Day opens up the door to be like a way crazier science fiction movie, a way crazier science fiction universe. So it's interesting, and then they do that with this movie. They just go hard into hard, goofy sci-fi. The tone of it is no longer really like the fun adventure movie, the 90s kind of adventure movie. The tone is like a really goofy Saturday morning cartoon. And I'm going to tell you something that's kind of maybe might blow your mind. I do not hate Independence Day Resurgence, okay? I think you got to go in with the right perspective, understand you're watching some schlocky B movie 50s era type style, just goofy ass alien invasion movie with psychic powers and crazy stuff. Now, I will say this, the characters are not as good. So there's a little bit of contrivance here and there. I mean, the movie goes completely off the rails in the last like 40 minutes, like completely off the fucking rails, like in a way that is shocking. But to me, it was awesome. I really had a good time watching it. I don't know why people hate it so much. I'm not like, especially relative to the things that come out that are like it. Like, what the fuck are you expecting? It's a sequel to Independence Day. Like, it's almost like people wanted some like, deep, meaningful experience that like validated their feelings of the first movie because they watched it when they were a kid. But no, you got to take it as its own thing. And I think the most interesting thing about Resurgence, like I said, is this idea that it kind of took the ball and ran with it from a concept of like, now they have all this alien technology. How would that fundamentally change life? How would that fundamentally change things? Oh, it's so goofy, though. It is a goofy-ass movie. And was it Vivica A. Fox goes from stripper to head of a hospital in 10 years. And that's not a knock, and I'm not saying that you couldn't. It just seemed a little pandery, a little silly. The cast is fun, though. I mean, Bill Pullman comes back. He's great. Jeff Goldblum is great. Charlotte Gainsbourg is actually fit right in with everybody. I wish... It's just not super memorable other than like some of the crazy set pieces. Like that's what makes it kind of memorable and interesting. And I like that they brought Brett Spiner back. They kind of came up with a fun, goofy reason for him to have not actually been dead. And he's been in a coma forever. And he looks exactly the same as he did in Independence Day 10 years before. Yeah, so I never really looked into what the critics said about the movie. They're like, oh, it's just a dumb, bloated action movie, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, okay. Did you watch fucking Independence Day? Did you watch it? It's not the most well-balanced movie in the world. And Resurgence, I don't know. I want to see release the Emmerich cut. I want to see the Independence Day Resurgence director's cut. I want to see that 3-hour assembly cut. Let's go. Lots of stuff there. Because there's not so much like plot holes in Resurgence. It's just kind of moves at a very breakneck speed. Because it's, again, got kind of a big cast. A lot of different subplots, a lot of stuff going on. But this one like keeps it at 2 hours. Which is, I was thankful. I'm thankful for that. Thank you, Emmerich. Not everything needs to be fucking 3 hours long. But yeah, so it kind of just moves. It just moves. And there's a few subplots that you're kind of like confused why they're there. Like Judd Hirsch gets an inordinate amount of time as like his subplot of like going to the Area 52 base or wherever the hell they end up at the end of the movie. Like he's on a boat that gets capsized by a giant tidal wave from the aliens. And then he ends up on a school bus full of kids and they're driving through the desert. It's just like, it has no reason to be in the movie. You can completely cut all that stuff out of the movie and it would have been fine. I was honestly just shocked to see him still alive. I remember in 20,000, I was like, oh, he's still alive. Actually, funny thing, I don't think he's that much older than Jeff Goldblum in reality. I think there's only like 12 years apart or something like that. So, there you go. That's beautiful Jeff Goldblum fooling us all. Very handsome man. Yeah, that's really all I got to say about it, though. Like I said, it wasn't enough for a whole video. Figured I'd tack it on at the end here. But yeah. I'd give it a chance if you've never seen it. I'm not going to say you're going to love it. You're not going to love it, but give it a shot. Give it a chance. Why not? What do you got to do? Your life is meaningless. You're just trying to do your best to not become a battery. Go for it. Watch Resurgence. Maybe they'll reject you because you've watched Resurgence. Maybe like, oh, this is that guy that thought Resurgence was okay. That's going to be some bad battery energy. It's going to poison everything. But best to leave him alone. Let him live his life in peace on a mountain somewhere. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my personal Twitter. Also, if you'd like to make a request for one of these daily videos or something to be on the big show, Zoobox goes to the movies, leave it in the description. Keep your eye out for next week. We're going to be watching and talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey. Also, if you haven't checked it out, it dropped yesterday. Danimal from Zoobox came on, and we talked about Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master. So go check those out if you haven't, and then look forward to 2001. And we'll see you next time. We'll see you tomorrow. What we're going to be talking about, I have no idea, but we'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.